Here is the most played out statement in running. Runners need to strength train. I'm sure you heard it and you might do it, but how the hell do you even do it right? And what is even right? In this episode, I'm gonna go deeper than normal. I usually go pretty deep and squash all myths about run strength training with the help of a medical sports professional. We'll clear up all the confusing stuff while giving you five body weight only run specific strength training workouts for you to do right now in your house with no equipment. If you're more advanced of a gym rat, you can still make these harder and more challenging with weights and resistance, and we'll tell you how to do that. We will touch on exactly the 5 exercises: Bulgarian split squat, single leg deadlift, bent knee calf raise, push-ups, and side plank with leg raise, what they actually are, the science behind them, why they are so important, how to actually do them, and example sets. Oh, why should you believe me, and who am I? Well, I'm Darren D-Lake Runs. I've been running since 1994. I'm a 3-hour marathon runner and a 10-hour Ironman triathlon finisher, and still trying to get sub 16 minutes in the 5K. Still trying, TBD on that. And since 2012, I've been researching, experimenting, and talking to experts on how to get 1% better each day in my training, racing, and life, all to make it that much simpler and easier for you. I'll be joined by Sam Shearman, a Sydney-based physio/physical therapist who specializes in running-related injuries. She also developed the 10W2S 10 Weeks to Strength for Runners app. Enough from me. Let's go. So let's go with number 1, Bulgarian split squat. And tell me what it is, and then we'll get into a couple more things.
So a Bulgarian split squat is a rear foot elevated split squat. I quite like this exercise because it helps us work with a single leg stance, so building single leg strength, and we can particularly target the glutes and quadriceps with this one. So it's almost replicating the demands of running, and you can get a lot of load through that front leg without equipment.
Why do you think it's so important for runners especially to do this?
Once again, it replicates the demands of running. We have one leg in extension, which is essentially giving your hip flexors a stretch. And the forward leg, we want to train in single leg stance, again, replicating what we do when we actually run. Thirdly, I do think it's an excellent way to target some of the key muscle groups. So glutes, quads, and you can make it as hard as you want to make it.
Yeah. Would you say when you get better, you can start adding resistance, so adding weights?
Absolutely.
Dumbbells,
barbells, depending on how heavy you want to go. Or if you haven't got any weights, you can just increase the time at the depth of the squat, so turn it into a bit of an isometric exercise.
All right, so how do you do it?
So essentially, I start sitting down on a bench with both feet, knees at 90 degrees. If you extend the forward knee, heel on the ground, and then stand up, it means the forward leg is in the correct position and you can take the back leg onto the back of a bench or a chair. From this position, you lower down into the squat. Now, ideally, we want to have that front knee around 90 degrees. It gives a bit of space at the knee joint. However, you can make it more quad dominant if you bring that front leg further towards you, or you can make it more glute dominant by bringing the front leg further away.
Wow, it sounds like a super versatile.
Yeah, there's a lot you can do with it, hence why I love it for runners.
So what are some ways that people can do this wrong?
It's usually when the foot is too close to the bench, because usually when I'm demonstrating this exercise to patients, they likely haven't done it before. So it's quite an awkward, uncomfortable position. If your front foot is too close to the bench, you want to be starting out with that, 90-degree angle at the knee. I don't think of any other errors I tend to see. Oh, it could be due with the upper body too. Like sometimes people are leaning way too forward or looking at the ground. You want to have your chest up, nice and tall, slight angle at the hips, and looking forward as always, trusting yourself, not, worrying that what your supporting leg is doing. It is going to sway around a little bit, particularly if you're not used to the exercise. But put trust in your body. It will get better.
All right, the second one, single leg deadlift. So what is it exactly?
So if you can picture a traditional deadlift where you get that hip hinge and slight bend through the knee as you go into the depth of the movement, this is performing the exercise on one leg. For this reason, it helps to improve our single leg and our hip stability using muscle groups that wouldn't be worked in a traditional deadlift. It also helps with some stability too. There's a lot of movement happening around the knee and the hip, and if you can control those muscle groups, it means you can better control yourself when you're actually running.
Why should you do this? What's the core benefits?
I would say to do it as part of stability exercise. So a lot of runners lack a bit of strength in their glutes. And there's more to the glutes than just the max, medius and minimus. You've got your deep hip external rotators too. So they're the little ones that help keep the ball in the ball and socket, which is your hip joint. You can also do it for posterior chain strength. So a lot of hamstring work in this one. And hamstrings are important for the push-off at the end of your stance phase in running.
Can you explain just a bit of definition? What is the posterior chain?
So posterior chain is all the muscles that run along the back of the body. So this helps targets the core, but particularly the, erector spinae muscles, your glute muscles, so glute max, hamstrings are posterior chain, and also your calves are posterior chain too. So anything that runs along your back.
But let's get back to how to actually do this.
Okay, so with a single leg deadlift, you want to take one leg back. From this position, you start to hinge through the hips. And as you hinge through the hips, the body comes forward and you bend just slightly at the knee. You want to come so far forward that your face is almost horizontal to the ground. You also want to ensure there's no rotation through the pelvis. So a cue I give patients in the clinic is you can picture the two bony parts in front of your pelvis. Imagine there's flashlights on them and they're pointing directly down to the ground. You then hinge back up into the standing position to finish the first rep.
Sounds easy.
Yep. Yeah, it's harder than it looks.
Yeah, you make it sound so easy. Inverse, how do people do this wrong?
So a common one is they start flexing through their lumbar spine. So you want your lumbar spine, your back to be nice and straight. The movement comes from the hips. I often find that they perform the movement well until they get close to the ground and they try and reach that one little bit further, and then that's where they get their flexion. Flexion isn't a bad thing, but once again, we want to be doing this in a neutral posture. So we're, loading up the structures in the same way each time we do the exercise. Additionally, we do see a lot of rotation through the hips. So as the hips go down, you go down towards facing the ground. The contralateral, so the hip on the other side of the leg that's working will start to rotate upwards, and that is not going to load, in the plane we'd like it to. They're the two main things I see wrong with this exercise.
Right now is the part where I go, hey, if you're not feeling this, make sure you subscribe, rate, share it out with your friends about how amazing this is, rah, 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 rah. All right. While you should go out and do that anyway, how about I actually give you something that will help you? Is the running, health and fitness, and endurance sport internet too much sometimes? Is it too much conflicting content on how to train right? Or you just don't have time to read and watch the latest trends on how to, carb cycle for your next marathon? Don't worry. I'll take care of that for you by showing you how to train, race, and live 1% better consistently. To do this, just sign up for my free newsletter, OPB. I figure out this whole 1% better thing so you don't have to by scouring the endurance sports deepest and darkest corners of the internet. Go to delategreates.com/news, all spelled the normal way, to be inspired and motivated on the regular. Let's get back into it.
Number 3, bent knee calf raise. Tell me what it is.
Okay, so these are important for runners too. If you picture a traditional calf raise, the only change we do here is that we bend the standing knee. So essentially we put one foot on a step, bend your knee. In this position, you then lift your heel up by moving the ankle only. So the knee needs to stay in the same degree of flexion throughout the entire movement. As you lower down, you allow the heel to drop below the depth of the step and then coming back up to recommence the next repetition.
All right, why is it important?
This one's super important for runners because it's targeting our soleus, which is our endurance calf muscle. So the soleus, it can take on up onto 6 to 8 times our body weight when running, and it needs to be able to do this over a prolonged period of time. So it's one of the key calf muscles we want to ensure that we can have an efficient stride and reduce injury through the Achilles tendon too.
So how do you do it?
So with a bent knee calf raise, you stand on the edge of a step, you bend your knee. Now, the knee needs to stay in the same degree of flexion throughout the entire movement. From this position, you lift up your heel by flexing the ankle forwards. We call this plantar flexion. And then we lower the ankle back down below the height of the step. As we come up, that is the second repetition starting. But once again, that knee needs to stay the same throughout the entire movement. A common mistake I see is as people lift up, they lift their knee up as well to facilitate the movement where it all just needs to come from the ankle.
What would be like a workout for bent knee calf raises?
I think starting off with a 3x12 rep range for your soleus bent knee calf raise is a good idea. I like to break things into 4s. You could do 3x4. 3 by 12, then down to 4 by 10 for another 4 weeks, and then you can go to perhaps 5 by 8 for another 4 weeks. So essentially you're reducing the rep range, you're increasing the load, and that's going to help, build strength in the tendon and the muscle itself over that time frame. If you haven't got any equipment at home, you can always, I tell some patients, get a bag, put some books in there and make it nice and heavy.
Number 4, push-ups. What is a push-up? I know everyone knows what a push-up is, but you know what? Let's just define it anyway.
Push-ups, when you're in a plank position, a high plank, you lower your body down to the ground through flexing your elbows, holding there and then pressing back up. It's an excellent core exercise, so people tend to forget about the core, throughout the push-up. They see it as traditional chest exercise. And when we do a push-up for runners, I prefer to have the elbows facing backwards towards your feet as opposed to out to the side. It's going to help elicit more tricep action, which is more important for runners because it sort of replicates the arm swing that we go through.
All right, why is it important? Why should runners do it?
Well, runners need to work on upper body strength. It helps with posture. It helps with your arm swing. It even can help with breathing mechanics. So this is a great one because we are covering, a lot of key muscle groups. So it's a good, again, if you're time poor, push-ups are a great one to add in. And you can make them harder too. It's, again, without any equipment. You can start from your knees. You can go full length. You can even go put your feet on a chair, hands on the ground. Lots of ways you can do a push-up.
How do you do the push-up? I know a lot of people, but this is how do you do it the right way?
Yeah, so you put your hands underneath your shoulders. You're starting in a high plank position. Again, we want our elbows facing backwards. You lower yourself down to the ground. If you want to make it harder, you stay in that position where you're just hovering above the ground just for a little bit longer and then you press up. So another common mistake I see with push-ups, people fly through them so quickly and we don't want to go too fast through these exercises because that's what we do with running. That's where we're stressing our tendons. Tendons best respond to slower, heavy, slow resistance work. So you want to make sure the time's nice and controlled as you go through the push-up.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do people do them wrong? And I think, would you say not engaging the core? And just
yes, that's another one.
Yeah.
So when you start to notice their lumbar spine dip down, that's another incorrect technique.
Side plank with leg raise. What is it?
So I love this exercise. It's a good, again, bang for your buck exercise. We're working lots of muscle groups. Essentially, I want patients to get in a plank position, a side plank position. So that's where your elbow is underneath your shoulder, which is in line with your hip, which is in line with your knee. Now, I get patients to bend the bottom knee, and runners, and lift the hips up while the top leg is still nice and long. So this is the side plank position, but the bottom leg is bent. From here, on the top leg, we turn the toe down and then slowly raise the leg up. Now, you don't need to go that high, perhaps in line with your hip or even slightly higher. In this position, both glute medius are working, so both your hip stabilizers, as well as your core muscles, so obliques, as well as some of your shoulder stabilizers. It's really hard. 10 to 12 reps is enough for most people. If you do it with good form, and again, once again, the slow tempo is key here. Turning that top toe down just elicits more glute medius, which is what we want.
How do people do it poorly?
A common one I see is where their hips are too far back when they go to lift up into the planks. They're on a kind of funny angle from their shoulder to their hip, then back to the knee. Second common mistake is doing the exercise too quickly. Third common mistake is not turning that top toe down.
All right, and workout example?
So a workout with this on, because you're working both glute medius in this plank position, as you abduct or raise that top leg, your bottom glute is stabilizing, the top one is moving. So they're both being fatigued in the first set. So I usually say 10 to 12 reps, and then you need to rest at least 30 seconds before changing sides to form the 10 to 12 reps on the other side. And I would say 2 sets of 10 to 12 each per side, but ensuring you're resting from side A to side B. Does that make sense?
No, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And to be honest, that whole toe turn down thing, you did that with me when we were filming in the park. Oh my God.
Yes.
And I literally it felt like I was frozen. I was like, I can't do this. This is how you were like, this is
runners are always trying to feel your glutes. This is one where you can really feel your glutes. And if you can't, that's where you're not doing the exercise right.
Yeah. All right, so went over a lot today, and while this is kind of like a really good foundation, I call it basic
Yeah.
strength exercises. Do you have anything to add or say to anyone to end this?
Not much, as I think can't go wrong with getting strong.
Boom!